The first category of food exporting countries are those whose supply systems for everything from finance to fertilizers to fuels are sufficiently in-house that they can continue producing their current product set with only minor adjustments. France, the United States, and Canada are the only countries on the planet that check all the boxes. Russia is a near miss. Russian farm vehicles are, well, Russian. Saddled with an aging and collapsing population, Russia simply doesn't have the labor to maintain ag output with anything less than the sort of mammoth field equipment that Russia is incapable of manufacturing for itself. Next up are those exporting countries that have most of the pieces in place regionally. Ranked from those facing the least to greatest challenges: New Zealand, Sweden, Argentina, Australia, Turkey, Nigeria, India, Uruguay, Paraguay, Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, Italy, and Spain. All have shortcomings, most notably in accessing equipment, fertilizers, and energy. But none are likely to face the sort of extreme supply or security challenges that will wreck production in more vulnerable locations. Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine are in this category as well. In addition to input shortages, there's an open question whether any excess food output can be exported anywhere useful as Russia asserts greater control over them. Keep in mind that Russia grows a lot of wheat on its marginal territories. In poor harvest years at the height of the order, Russia already interfered with exports out of the other 3 wheat belt states in order to ensure its own people sufficient food supplies. The third category are those exporters that simply cannot maintain the input flows required to keep things going without a perfect constellation of unlikely geopolitical factors that are largely beyond their capacity to shape. They won't face catastrophic production declines, but they'll have to get used to agriculture becoming intermingled with geopolitical threats. And in some years, that means crops simply won't perform to snuff. This is the future for Brazil, Croatia, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, Pakistan, and South Africa. Fourth among the exporters are those places that have carved out a place for themselves among the agricultural powers of the order. Most of their supply chains lie outside of territories they can reach, and most face security concerns that will make it impossible for them to maintain what has become their business as usual. Bulgaria, Estonia, Czech Republic, Ethiopia, Finland, Germany, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Mali, Romania, Slovakia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The real desperation is on the importer's side of the ledger. The first category are those who are close enough to exporters both geographically and diplomatically that they need not over-worry about getting cut off. Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Iceland, Indonesia, Malaysia, Mexico, Norway, Peru, the Philippines, Portugal, Singapore, and the United Kingdom. Japan also falls into this category not because it is close to food suppliers, but because it has the naval reach to go out and secure what it needs. The second group of importers is where things get uncomfortable. Food will be available, but at a price, and not one that is entirely denominated purely in financial terms. These importers will need to bend to their suppliers' will. Should they not, foodstuffs will be directed elsewhere. Russia will use this food diplomacy to help consolidate control over Mongolia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Kyrgyzstan. Based upon how quickly the rivers of Central Asia dry up over the next 1 to 3 decades, the Russians could find themselves either competing with Uzbekistan for Central Asian dominance or overwhelming a desperate, perma-drought-stricken Uzbekistan. Or both. Hyper-food-secure France is going to get all neo-colonial. Paris will establish a suzerain relationship with Belgium, will attempt one with Switzerland, and will firm up links with a willing Morocco and Tunisia and an unwilling Algeria. The French will also establish as many dependencies as possible in the oil-rich states that are part of what was once known in imperial days as French West Africa, most notably Gabon, Congo-Brazzaville, and Chad. India will spend some food to own Bangladesh, which will find itself in the worst of all worlds. Less precipitation in the southern Himalayas means the overall productivity of Bangladeshi rice paddies will drop. But what water flows the country receives are more likely to be in the spring when they could well overflood rice production, dealing local food production a double blow. Nigeria, the only African nation that can maintain its agricultural output without extensive outside assistance, will establish a sphere of influence that includes Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Togo, and Benin. In a bit of turnabout as fair play, oil and natural gas-rich Nigeria will find itself sparring, neo-colonial style, with the French throughout West Africa and doing reasonably well in the contest. Turkey was already going to emerge as the master of the Eastern Mediterranean. It will use its superior land quality, mild climate, and command of the region's oil and trade flows not only to keep its agricultural system running, but also to extract geopolitical concessions from Azerbaijan, Georgia, Greece, Iraq, Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. The United States will trade food for cooperation on a variety of issues with the Central American states and the Caribbean nations and islands, including Cuba. On less friendly terms, the Americans will use food as one of the levers to force Venezuela into a shape more to its liking. On more friendly terms, American food diplomacy will steadily transform Colombia into one of America's fastest friends and allies. Even though both will need to bring in food from farther abroad, Japan and the United Kingdom will likely bundle it into the array of tools used to force their wills upon Korea and Ireland. As for the rest, there just won't be enough food to go around. What food imports might arrive will either be part of a severe quid pro quo or will represent a happy constellational alignment that can neither be planned for nor relied upon. Everyone not already mentioned in the Middle East, the region most overpopulated relative to its agricultural capacity, and sub-Saharan Africa is more or less on their own. And with global agricultural inputs no longer reliable, downward population shifts are inevitable. Since 1945, and especially since 1992, the world has been living in extreme calorie surplus, that it takes about 9 times as many inputs to generate a calorie from animals as it does from plants. And the post-World War II era has enabled the vast bulk of humanity to drastically up their animal consumption. Yet all of us are well aware that even in this time of plenty, some locations do not have enough to go around. The issue is economic. Haiti, a chronically undeveloped country, is a quintessential example. Until the mid-1980s, the Haitian diet was primarily root crops, maize, and some wheat. Crops that were either not particularly calorie-dense or were broadly inappropriate to Haiti's tropical climate. The Haitian population often flirted with famine. But Haiti sits off the coast of the world's agricultural superpower. And by 2010, American-grown rice became the single largest component of the Haitian diet. Not only was U.S. rice more reliable and caloric than homegrown options, but also, because of the economics of America's industrialized agriculture, American rice was also cheaper than anything the Haitians could grow themselves. This price point disconnect contributed to 3 follow-on impacts. Reliably cheaper food that arrived more reliably largely destroyed Haitian agriculture, both in terms of production directly and in the preservation of the skill sets required to reboot that production at a future date. The sudden collapse of livelihoods throughout a largely agrarian system contributed to the vast denuding of the country's forest as the increasingly destitute population sought to build rafts and paddle to the United States. The Haitian population doubled, in large part because food was so cheap. Haiti isn't even the extreme case. Many states are worse managed, are suffering greater agricultural collapses, or both. I'm particularly concerned, in no particular order, about Afghanistan, Cuba, North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, Yemen, Syria, Libya, Zimbabwe, Honduras, Guatemala, Laos, Turkmenistan, Iraq, Sudan, South Sudan, Niger, and Mali. All have experienced population booms beyond their system's capacity to feed them, while simultaneously losing command of the pre-industrial skill sets that sustained their pre-order populations. For many of these places, the pre-order, pre-industrial struggle for subsistence will soon be thought of as a high point that cannot be returned to. Should something happen to those imported food flows, civilizational collapse into anarchy complete with a population correction isn't simply a distinct possibility. It is the most likely outcome. After all, a government that cannot feed its population is a government that falls. That's the story of the biggest losers in relative terms. In absolute terms, the biggest loser by far will be China.